Good morning, everyone. It's Joker, and today we are back with another slime video. For a video that I think people have been requesting for a while, and I have just never gotten around to it, either because I just lack time or I just keep pushing other videos out related to limited content, and this one kind of gets forgotten about. But we're going to be talking about charms again today. I've got a bunch of videos on charms already as far as leveling them up and what they do. But this will be a video where I talk about the charms that I personally find the most useful. Now again, this is very opinionated, so you may think that other charms are more necessary than others, but generally, since I've been playing since charms came out, I have a reasonable idea of what can be useful and what I think most people should kind of shy away from as far as leveling up immediately for your first few ones. So we are in the news preview where they first introduced charms, and we have the 1-star, 2-star, and 3 stars. And, excuse me, each charm level has different effects. 1-star charms have, low-powered effects. They're beginner charms. They're easy to come by, but they don't have very strong effects. Level 2 is when things start to get fairly specific, and things get a little bit better as far as power or percentages are concerned. And then 3-star charms are very specific and also very powerful, but it takes a butt ton to awaken them. We're not going to talk about how to awaken charms here. We're only going to talk about what I think is good and what I think people should awaken. And then you can go watch one of my other videos on how to awaken charms or something. But here is the list of charm effects. So 1-star charms, and these are at max charm level. So this is like the maximum power of a charm effect. So 3% attack, 10% defense, all soul skill point gains. So any soul, whatever, any orb gets an extra 6%, extra 6% skill points, or protection gauge, or alt gauge. These are pretty meh. I wouldn't work on any. 1-star charms are honestly to be used as fodder for leveling up and enhancing your other charms. 2-star charms, some of them are good. I personally like the secret skill damage charm, 8%. That's alt damage, so extra 8% alt damage can be very useful on a team that doesn't have a lot of buffs, and so you have no one that has an alt damage buff to begin with. That extra 8% actually could help you out more than you would think. This AoE 8%, I don't think is really worth it working on now. I think it's good for maybe more later stages of the game, but not realistically good for starting out. Physical attack and magic attack resistance, don't worry about those. The 8% heal for all allies is a fairly worthy charm at the beginning of the game. When a lot of people take a lot of damage from AoEs, you can heal back a bit of that, especially on a team that can cycle their protector quickly. So I would consider working on this 8% charm for heal right here, alongside the alt damage. And then we have these ones that get kind of specific. Green soul skill point increase, blue soul protection gauge increase, and orange soul alt gauge increase. Out of all three of these ones right here, probably should work on the blue protection gauge, because blues already give you a lot of protection gauge, and a team that runs on blues means you want to use your protector a lot. So what this is going to do is going to help you get an extra 20% to your protection gauge, which means that you can cycle it that much faster. This is a very, very good end game charm, and it's only a 2-star. 20% may not seem like a lot, but it does add up if you're on a stacking team where you're there for 8 turns and you use blues pretty much the entire way through the fight. That extra 20% will add up very, very quickly and will give you 1 or even 2 extra uses of protection, which is 2 extra stacks of whatever you're stacking, alt damage or attack or space attack or something like that. This is a very, very, very good charm, especially since blue teams are very prevalent. They love pushing out blue teams and green teams. So this one right here is probably the one I use the most out of all of these 2-star charms. The extra alt gauge on oranges, don't worry about it. Extra skill point on greens, not really that important as starting out, and I don't use these ones very often. Crit damage and pierce power can be useful in the specific circumstances where you are already critting or you are already piercing, right? This does not give you crit rate, it is damage. So you have to be critting and you have to be piercing before this extra 8% actually kicks in. So it is rather specific, It does add a little bit of extra damage. I find that actually the alt damage probably adds a bit more to your total DPS than these two, but these are fair charms to work on if you're losing out and you're very focused on Pierce. The current meta, as I'm recording this right now, is a Pierce-focused meta with the Halloween, Shinsha, and Milim. They definitely want Pierce. Milim gives Pierce great, which means that Pierce power will be activated. So this could be a fairly decent charm for extra damage is concerned on your Pierce teams. And it doesn't really matter if it's magic or physical, it's just Pierce power. So out of the 2-star charms, I recommend the blue protection gauge, I recommend the heal, the alt gauge, or the alt damage, and then the crit and Pierce power, but that's on like low end, right? I really, if you need a 2-star charm to max out, it should be the blue protection gauge charm out of anything else out of here. Everything else is situational at best. Level 3 charms. These ones are very powerful. You have every single attack, even though it only lists 6 here. There's 7, technically. So they never actually updated that. They never actually fixed it. But all 7 attack charms, 10%, can be useful. And that applies to normal orbs, it applies to alts, it applies to counterattacks. It is just, if you activate your protection gauge, and you just have an extra 10% elemental attack. So these are fine to work on. They're probably not as effective as you want them to be, so maybe not make them the primary focus. Guard penetration, guard power, counter power, not things you should worry about. Very, very situational at best. Guard power may be only good for the Vengeance team, but if you don't have it, I wouldn't worry about these 3. Heals the ally with the lowest percentage of HP by up to 24%. Almost a quarter of their health bar is just healed. This is a big time charm and will help with a lot of endgame content as well, because the 2-star one heals everybody by 8%, which is useful, right? If a lot of people are taking damage a lot, then you can heal up everyone at an 8% consistent rate. But this heal charm, especially for Valor Cup, where they generally only target one unit unless you swap out and they switch to another one, 24% healing every time you use a protection gauge is huge, especially when you can use protection gauge, however many times in Valor Cup, 3 or something by the end of the fight. You can heal a lot of damage that you've taken back. And even on high difficulty, PvE quests, this healing may or may not save your life. So this, again, is a very, very high priority charm to max out. And then we have the gauges. So Souls of Skills, these gauges are going to differ from these gauges, because these ones buff the immediate effect of what that color orb does. So this is greens, getting more skill points. Greens already give you a lot of skill points, right? So that's why it's not really that efficient. Blues are more important, so getting more protection gauge on blues is good. Getting more alt gauge on oranges, not really that important. But what these 3-star charms are doing are buffing the other things that orb would not normally buff that well. So green protection gauge, green alt gauge. Green protection gauge is another very important one. It's 40%, which is pretty significant. So the green protection gauge, I would definitely do. I wouldn't worry about the green alt gauge. Don't worry about that one. Blue skill point gain can also be useful, but I don't think this one is nearly as useful as its 2-star variant for giving you more protection gauge. So you could probably hold off on this one. And then the blue alt gauge, I wouldn't worry about that one either. Orange skill point gain, if you have Toa, you don't really need this charm. Orange protection gauge can be useful, but since oranges just give you so little protection gauge to begin with, an extra 40% really doesn't make that much of a difference. So I would probably avoid working on the orange charms for now of any time. Increases all allies alt gauge by 8%. So hold on, this is wrong. Okay, this increases all allies secret skill gauge by 8%. It is not that. It is this charm right here. Increases the secret skill gauge of the ally with the highest attack by 16%. So the wording in that news preview was wrong. This is the charm. So this, if you use it, and it's mainly used on a stacking protector most of the time, but every time you use your protector, whoever has the highest attack stat at that immediate moment gets an extra 16% alt gauge. And you can keep going. 16, 32, blah, 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 math. You can get a lot of protection gauge if you're cycling your protector a lot. And this is just free alt gauge. So what you could do, in some circumstances, is that you could have someone with no alt gauge, bring him in for a turn, use the protector, and then swap him back out. And they will slowly but surely get an ult without actually having to send any orbs. This is a good charm, but it is very specific. And again, because it's limited to the ally with the highest attack, sometimes you have extra dupes in your support units and your orb changers. They might have higher attack than your actual nuker because you're going to give your nuker a whole bunch of buffs, and then they're going to have higher attack. But if they don't have a high base attack versus all 4 of your other characters, they're never going to get this buff, which can lead this to being kind of irrelevant sometimes. So it's a good charm, maybe not worth it to focus on immediately. And then the last 2 charms are the gold and magic charms. These are passive farming charms. So if you're going to go in and you're going to do like a 999 process on magicules, you should equip this, even at level 1, because it's going to give you just a little bit extra for free and easy, right? It goes up to 20%, so every time that you want to do a big process, I'm getting 20% extra magicules from that. The same with the gold one, 20%. These are good just for farming, but realistically, like, I have a lot of charms maxed out. Like, here is, crit damage, here's pierce power, here's the AoE 8% heal, up here is the single target 24% heal. So honestly, it's going to be the single target 24% heal. It's going to be the, let's see, where is it? Not that one. I want this one. Protection gauge on green charm. And then it's going to be this 2-star protection gauge on blue charm, are probably the 3 that I use the most out of any of the other charms. So single target heal, extra blue gauge on blues, and extra blue gauge on greens. My top 3 charms that I use personally at the very, very tippity top of end game content. So hopefully I broke that down well enough for you. I guess I can do something else. Hold on, let me make a cut. Alright, so it's easy to at least visually see. I made a very not complete tier list of them, but the top 3 that I think people should work on the most is the 24% single target heal charm, the extra protection gauge on blue charm, and the extra protection gauge on green charm. And then we have 5 more that are fairly decent for most general use. Extra ult damage, extra healing for everybody, extra crit damage, extra pierce power, and then the ult gauge of your ally with the highest attack. These, I think, are a good batch of charms that most people can work on. Some of them are 2-stars, like the pierce, the crit, the 8% heal, the ult damage, and the 20% extra gauge on blues. They're all 2-star charms, which makes them easier to rank up, because you get a lot more 2-star charms than 3-stars. The other ones may take you a bit longer, but definitely there's something to work towards. So there you go. That is my top 8, I guess. Top 8 charms right there that I recommend most people work on. Let me know if you have any comments, but that's it for me. Take it easy, and I'll see you all later.